There's this number. There's this number that we hear a lot of times because y'all have heard a wide variety of numbers. And I've been teaching y'all over the past 2 years everything that you can possibly know and how you're affected, the middle class, so on and so forth, about inflation. We know last year inflation had hit above 9%. For some of y'all, it was significantly higher in your personal life. But there's this magic number that we always try to stay at, and it's at 2%. Maybe I'll do a whole show one day on deflation, inflation, certain countries that's been destabilized as a result of inflation getting out of control and so on and so forth, and what happens when you have deflation. But there's this magical number, and it's 2%. And it's a number that's being heralded, celebrated, and it's the number that the Fed would like for inflation to get at, which is one of the reasons why they're raising rates. And I'm going to break this down from a C student's perspective for the people in the back. But I want you to remember that number, 2%, okay? And I want to teach you something. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have a conversation about this 2% number. But before we get into it, let me go ahead and tell y'all need to hit a like for the YouTube algorithm again, or dislike, because the numbers aren't proportional. It's not proportional to how many people is in here, right? If we almost got 1,000 people in here, even at a time that we not even usually streaming, but we got less than 500 likes, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Let's get into the video, ladies and gentlemen.
2%.
2%.
2%.
The 2% inflation target is key to the Fed's vision for stable prices in the U.S. economy, as well as the rest of the world.
2% Bank of England inflation target.
But who decided 2% was the magic number?
It is, I think, an error to say 2% is somehow magically the right number.
You would think somewhere in the Bible, and God says He wants 2% inflation.
The 2% inflation target, it's relatively arbitrary.
It was invented oddly in New Zealand.
25, 30 other central banks adopted the New Zealand approach, so we led the way in inflation targeting. I mean, there's a bit of a mafia amongst central bankers. Once you're in the family sort of things. And they all get together, sit around conference tables.
Turns out the 2% inflation target didn't exactly start that way.
It's sort of a historical accident.
Somehow it just became 2%. Like 2%'s good.
Yeah, they missed out the 0 2. It was 0 to 2.
Here's how economies across the globe adopted inflation targeting, how they settled on 2%, and whether or not that target may change.
Now remember, every single quarter, the Fed is evaluating, as you watch this, as we break this down, as I continue to give insight and information on how it is that you need to understand money. When you understand money, you understand business. When you understand business, you become more successful in your household. You become more successful in your job. You become more intentional with what it is that you're doing with your money and your resources that you're trading your time for. Keep in mind, every single quarter, and I know that a lot of y'all that's been rocking with me, it'll be 3 years, and I think September or something like that here on the Millionaire Morning Show. I know a lot of y'all that have been rocking with me are more informed than you've ever been. But we don't understand the reason why we're doing what we're doing. We don't understand why we're driving down inflation. We don't understand why we're artificially creating an economy where we have to lay people off based off of the fact that we need to drive down inflation. How do you do that? What is in the Fed's arsenal in order to be able to do so? They have to continue to raise rates. Raising rates basically makes it more expensive for you to get a hold of cheap money. Meaning it's going to be more expensive for you to be able to finance a home. It's going to be more expensive for you to be able to finance a car. It's going to be more expensive for you to be able to draw money in order to get business loans. Anytime you have to rely on financing a bank, servicing a loan, it is going to cost you more money to be able to beg, borrow, and steal in order to do the things that you thought was normal back in the day. So now when you see rates, interest rates continue to go up, the cost for you to be able to buy a home 2 years ago is much different than what the interest rates are today. How much you're going to be paying on a monthly basis is much different than what you're going to be paying today. So when you draw money and you get a HELOC, a home equity loan, when you draw money out and you refinance your home and you got to pay a higher rate, when you draw money and you use your credit cards in order to start your business, when y'all keep talking about credit scores, now you can start to add in some context and some better understanding of how it is that we got to these numbers and these interest rates in the first place. A lot of y'all don't even question or ask questions why we paid the interest rates that we paying. Why are credit cards so high? Why are mortgage loans exactly what they are? Why is it that you get this particular rate? And it's not just based off of your credit. You get it based off of a lot of other factors, and this is the insight and information that you need in order to make informed decisions.
The Federal Reserve uses monetary policies to achieve its dual mandate: maximum employment and price stability. Price stability can be achieved with inflation targeting, which is
It's just the simple idea that the way a central bank should run its policy is to choose an explicit numerical target for inflation.
the Federal Reserve didn't have an official inflation target until 2012, which happened to be right after the Federal Open Market Committee contrarian of the time, Tom Honig, left his position.
I was president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City from 1991 to 2011. During the period that I was there, it followed the great inflation. That period was really quite chaotic, if you will.
And too many dollars start chasing too few goods. The result, inflation.
In the late 80s, an individual from the Bank of New Zealand came to the United States.
That individual is Arthur Grimes. He is pretty much the father of inflation targeting.
In the 70s and 80s, New Zealand had one of the highest inflation rates in the Western world.
Grimes was fresh out of the London School of Economics.
Yeah, and I applied these new insights into designing a brand new central bank act. It was a wonderful opportunity for a really freshly minted PhD economist. I had worked at the bank for 6 years before I did my PhD, so I knew the central bank well.
So the bank was shifting to be more independent because in New Zealand at the time, its central bank was tied to the government.
We were saying, well, okay, if we have independence, what should we target? Interest rates or the money supply? One day I said, well, actually, what are we trying to achieve? We're trying to achieve price stability. Why don't we just have an inflation target? It was sort of like cut through the middleman.
And thus, inflation targeting was born.
Now, when we say inflation targeting, it means that they better understand exactly what the impact of printing money is, okay? I'm going to break it down from a C student's perspective because I know a lot of y'all will hear this video and sometimes it'll go in one ear and out the other, right? And when y'all were in class in college or in high school and they would play a video and then they would say, all right, we're about to take a pop quiz, you wouldn't even know what they were saying because they're talking over your head. And they take these experts and they bring them in and they say whatever it is that they're going to say from a historical perspective, but you don't know how to digest that and then help use that and help you to understand how it is that you need to be moving differently, right? Let me break it down from a C student's perspective. They started to understand the impact of what printing more money in order to solve their problems had on you as a consumer and then them as a government body. So for example, right, back when we used to have our money backed by actual real assets that were sitting inside of the Federal Reserve, we could justify the cost of being able to save money. Money itself, okay, has no value. It's not even worth the paper that it's printed on. Money itself has no value. It's not even worth the paper that it's printed on. But how do we substantiate that a dollar is a dollar? And how do we compare the dollar against the euro? And how is it that we can substantiate $1 million and makes you a millionaire and that's actually meaningful when you can go over to Zimbabwe and $1 million is like having 13 cents? How do we substantiate that? Well, in order to actually get people to buy into what it is that we're doing from a financial perspective, meaning you have to believe in the currency. When people compare the euro against the dollar, when people compare the yuan against the dollar, they have to have a central currency that they believe in order to then substantiate what the value or the worth is or of other currencies, right? And so what happened was, instead of us actually solving for the problems that we had within our economy, we said, you know what we can do? We could just print more money, and then printing more money will actually give us more in order for us to actually be able to solve for the problems that we have. Instead of us solving for the fundamentals of what our economic situation was as a country, we decided to print more money. Printing more money then drove up inflation because that means that the value of your dollar is going to go lower. It means that when you were able to buy a car for $3,000 in the 80s cash, the average price of a vehicle is increasing up to the 40s, the 50s, and the $60,000 range. That means that if you put money in the bank back then, $3,000 would probably be worth what? $3,400 today as far as how your money would grow based off of the rates that the bank would give you On the flip side, and I'm going to relate this back to what it is that we're doing from a financial perspective. On the flip side, you weren't keeping up with the rate of inflation. So your $3,000 is worth less than it ever had been if you had just put it in the bank or you stashed it under your mattress or whatever, so on and so forth. Whereas the cost of being able to buy a car has increased exponentially because the value of money has been driven lower because inflation is very, very high. So then when I tell you, you need to get assets, you need to buy watches, you need to buy not watches, but timepieces that increase with value. You need to invest in things. You need to put your money in things that then beat the rate of inflation. I'm telling you that you can't save your way to wealth, because as long as we have inflation, meaning the value of your dollar goes lower, so you need more money to do the same things that you were able to do yesterday, then you will continue to be behind the eight ball. So even if you think that you're making a lot of money, when I tell you that you make $100,000 a year, but being six figures is not the same as being six figures in the late 90s or the early 80s, it is a big difference. It's a huge difference because the value of your money does not go as far. And you can see that, the little indicators, how it is that we pay for feed in order to feed the chickens, that then substantiate whether or not we can actually pay for eggs, or the value of you going to get meat, or how much it costs to get a gallon of gas. When you see those old signs and it say 37 cents for some gas, or people used to be able to put, I remember back in the early 90s, we used to be able to put get $1 in gas in order to fill up our mopeds, and we'd be riding out. We used to get $1 of gas and fill up our mopeds, and we'd be riding out. So my point that I'm selling to you, and I'm selling this to you because I'm trying to convince you of doing the thing that's in your best interest, is that when you start to look at money, when you start to understand, when you're listening to these different people that are in the Fed, or people that used to be the former director of this and that and so on and so forth, they're giving you insight and information on how it is that you need to go about looking at things in the future by helping you to understand your past. It's the same thing with the Bible. The Old Testament gives you the blueprint of what it was that we went through so that you can understand why Jesus came to be able to fulfill the law and then die for the sins of man, so that we can then have the ability to be able to be a seed of Abraham, right? My point to you guys is that we need to understand where we come from. And everything you do, get understanding in order to understand how it is that you need to go about doing things from a financial perspective going forward. Give you another example. Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway. Do you know who owns Berkshire Hathaway? Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett still studies Ford Motor Company's results from the 70s because he then uses that same information, or the way in which he parsed that data, in order to make informed decisions on the companies that he's on invest in today. In order to understand where you're going, you need to know where you came from, but we don't lean on to that in order to give us excuses as to how we can't continue to be successful. Let's continue.
As a strict 2%, but instead as a range.
But we really wanted to embed our credibility by achieving a target that no one believed we would achieve. So we made the target pretty tight, just 1% plus or minus 1%, which became just the 0 to 2. But I have to tell you, even around the table at the central bank, we didn't believe it. The idea of achieving 1% inflation was none of us had experienced in our adult.
Even over at the central bank, they didn't believe in it. Even though that tells me, I'm not the smartest cookie in the book. As a matter of fact, I don't even consider myself a C student. I think that I have to work extra hard in order to meet the very average expectations of what most people believe or operate as, right? What he's telling you is that these numbers that they give you, they're literally just numbers in the sky that you can substantiate as easy talking points in order to get people to try to draw into what it is that they're saying. If I give you a sound number and you don't even question me where that number came from, if I just say 2%, right? They don't even believe it, but they understand they have to have it in order to be able to substantiate it to the American people or to people in general. If you don't get the understanding behind why they doing what they doing, then you can't make an effective decision on anything. You can't make an effective decision on how it is that you need to negotiate your salary package. You can't make an effective decision on whether or not a politician is lying to you. You can't make an effective decision on whether or not it's actually a good idea for you to go over there and get that mortgage. Why would you get a 30-year mortgage when you can get a 15? Why do people get a 30-year mortgage? I'll tell you why people get a 30-year mortgage. The reason why people get a 30-year mortgage is because they're used to everybody else getting a 30-year mortgage. They're used to everybody else getting a 30-year mortgage. You do it because everybody else do it. You don't do it because you have any real rhyme or reason or understanding as to how we're supposed to move from a financial perspective. You don't understand that you're going to pay more than triple of what the total cost, or more than double what the total cost of the house is for a 30-year mortgage. Whereas if you was to get a 15, not even saying that a 15 is the ideal scenario, you literally cut that cost in half and you get a better interest rate. You get a better interest rate when you get a 15 versus a 30. Most people don't even take into consideration the interest rate. They just want to own a home because you don't understand how money works. And instead of you looking to get a house based off of your lifestyle and how it is that you can be able to exist within your society and be able to thrive, so you put yourself in the best position possible, and then you can go and buy a mansion when you get rich. We then do the thing that's sold to us by everybody else because the banks did a really good job in marketing what their products are without actually even having to take out any ads on national TV. You believe in a 30-year mortgage just because your homeboy did it. We in the Me Too era and we don't even know it. We in the Me Too era when it come to money. We in the Me Too era when it come to women. We in the Me Too. Nobody is actually making an informed decision for themselves. Everybody is just leaning into the thing that everybody else is doing because that's the thing that sounds good to us. You know why they say $4.99, $49.99? You know why they say $99.99 instead of saying $100? Because subconsciously you think and you're being programmed to think that you're actually getting a deal even though you only saving a penny. Let me let this play for a little bit longer.
Lifetimes, pretty much. And we got there. In fact, we got there a year earlier than we said we would. From then on, people started saying, actually, they do mean business.
Like most things, instead of going to zero, everyone became satisfied with 2%. And
instead of saying zero, meaning no inflation or deflation, instead of saying zero, because the actual rate should be closer to zero, instead of us saying zero, no inflation or deflation, we're saying 2. Are y'all paying attention to the programming? Are y'all paying attention to what's being communicated to you? Are you paying attention to how we're easily manipulated in order to do things that other people believe is best for us because it's best for their pockets and it's an easy talking point? Why would you shoot for 2% when I can shoot for 0? Why would I shoot for paying a mortgage just to say I own a home when you really don't own the home? The bank own the home, and you'll actually never really own the home because if you don't pay property taxes, you're going to lose the property anyway.
And that became the target first in Europe and then eventually adopted by the European Central Bank.
Like inflation targeting became very fashionable in like the late 1990s, early 2000s.
Targeting 2% keeps consumer expectations anchored. So if people
listen to what she said, we're going to stop it right there. Targeting 2% keeps consumer expectations anchored. That means that you have such a low bar for what it is that you expect in your life. Now extrapolate this out into every other aspect of your life. Extrapolate this out into the relationship. I know y'all like to talk about relationships. Extrapolate this out over into every other aspect of your life. You have so low expectations that you don't even expect to get married before you have sex or have a child. You have so low expectations that you expect to pay interest and a loan and that we prioritize. Think about this. Debt, because it's a heavy expectation and it's the thing that we've been taught in order to continue to keep the economy running and to keep the banks profitable. Why do you think that back in 2008 they had to save the banks and they said that the banks was too big to fail? Because we don't make anything anymore. And the majority of the way in which we generate our money and our resources comes from the interest that comes along with whatever it is that they sold you in order to continue to service the loan. I'm not going to teach you. I'm not an economy teacher. I'm not going to sit here and give y'all a whole course. If y'all not a part of the Bag Chasers, if you're not a part of the Patreon, link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. I need you to start making more informed decisions and align yourself with a group of people that's actually going in the direction that you're going in. We set higher expectations over at the Bag Chasers, and that's why people hate us, because we don't settle for average. We don't settle for normal. We don't settle for the thing that's not best for you. We go all the way into the thing that we want, and that is 0 interest, no debt, super successful, married, greatness, phenomenal network, aligning yourself with a group of people that's going in the direction that you're going in, and we want all of the spoils. We not settling for halfway of anything. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. We got the cleaners, we got the pool guy and all of that here. So basically that's a sign to say they want to get us up out of here so that we can go ahead and take care of business. He over here cleaning the pool up. I appreciate it. Long as you don't, interrupt the Millionaire Morning Show. So listen, we had a phenomenal show today. I like streaming earlier. I'm going to try to figure out how I can stream earlier, but tomorrow we go back to normal, 11:30 Eastern a.m. We're going to start the live stream. We're going to get it popping. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. I hope y'all appreciate what it is that we did today over at the Millionaire Morning Show. I want to give you the entertainment. I want to give you the game. I want to give you the love. I want to give you everything great, but I also want you to be able to utilize the information that we have. I'm going to put the medicine and the candy. I want you to utilize the information that we're giving you in order to be able to leverage a situation in order to be super successful in every aspect of your life.